Hello and welcome to the Empower Couples podcast, where here you get modern, non-boring relationship advice for you and your partner to communicate like pros, fight smarter, and stay on the same team no matter the challenge that you face. I am one of your hosts, Aaron Freeman.
And I'm Jocelyn Freeman, but you all just know us as the Freemans.
And this episode is the follow-up from last week, where we're talking about what men need in marriage that is often overshadowed and unexpressed to their partner.
And we loved how receptive everyone was to last week's topic. So if you didn't hear that one on the women's needs, definitely go and listen to it. And I think that as we reveal this topic for men, again, it will make so much sense, but it's things that you can very easily lose sight of.
So I need to get something out in the open first. Mm-hmm. Okay, might be kind of like a little soapbox here, so give me a minute. Mm-hmm. Before we give you the answer to this need, again, it's not going to be what you think. What it is for sure not is more intimacy or to be initiated with.
Like sex.
Yeah.
Specifically
being straight to it. Mm-hmm. And I have to take a moment to really advocate for men here, because I've seen on a number of accounts out there kind of self-proclaimed marriage coaches that, oh, this holiday season, there's only one thing that your male partner needs, and that's more sex.
Just as a Christmas present. That's it. That's all they care about.
And it's just not right. It's just wrong to me. Mm-hmm. Is this a need of men? Yes, but it is not a main driver. It's like, what? Are we primates? Are we apes? We can't even get above these base levels of needing sex? Mm-hmm. It's like, are we not intelligent enough mentally, or we don't have an emotional capacity to actually need more than just that? It's like so basic that I feel like a little bit offended as a man that this is all men need. And so, yeah, that got me a little fired up. Mm-hmm. And then, so there's the offense for me as a male. But I also think that those accounts just aren't asking the real deep questions. I think it's such a generalization that it just speaks to me that, well, you're not having enough conversations or deep enough conversations to actually get to the real needs. Mm-hmm. Now, I got some tangible examples, because when we talk to couples, and we've talked to over 4,000 personal.
I calculated we have probably done 10,000 hours of sessions in the last 8 years.
Wow, that's a lot. Mm-hmm. And the needs shift. I mean, I think we could say from all these years, what we would have said was the answer to this question here today was probably different 5 years ago. And it just so happens that we have so many conversations and deep conversations with people that we really get to these root needs. Mm-hmm. And here is my example to prove this. Men don't only care about sex, because take this into account. A lot of the men that we talk to will have these complaints or upsets about, oh my gosh, I just get criticized, I get questioned, I get micromanaged, I get dictated to, I'm not appreciated for what I do. Okay, so those are a lot of the upsets that we're hearing. So if I ask those men, oh, okay, is what you need right now sex? It's like, no. Mm-hmm. I'm distancing myself from a person that I feel doesn't appreciate me, I'm micromanaged to, doesn't respect me, doesn't understand me. Mm-hmm. And it's like, no, you don't want to be intimate with them. And that is not the answer.
Yeah.
So I hope that really clears that up, because that's not all men that need.
Yes.
So as we get to this, as we said last time, do women want this need that I'm going to let you reveal?
Yeah.
Do women also need this? Yes, of course. But I think right now, based on the things that we were just saying, if you don't feel respected, understood, if you feel micromanaged and criticized, there's a different need here.
Exactly. And we could very easily go to one that we hear very often, which is the need to feel respected. And we have covered that in other episodes, because that is a core need, and that's addressed in a lot of books as well, that need for respect for men and then for women to feel loved. But we're going to take it a layer deeper, and also something that's more nuanced. And as I'm about to say the word, because I know you all are like, just say, what's the thing? This isn't the way that it would come out of their mouths, just like last week's, because they often don't have the language for it. They're trying to point to it. They're trying to describe it. But just like last week with emotional attunement, women didn't have the way to verbalize that. Men wouldn't say it this exact way. However, it really encompasses the thing that they want. And that is to experience harmony. harmony in the relationship, in the home. Now, harmony, again, is not a word people use in their everyday language, but is to experience peace, connection, fulfillment, joy, being in sync with each other. Now, the opposite is very clear, right? To not be in a state of harmony would be to feel like you are making withdrawals from each other's love accounts, to feel as though you walk inside the house and immediately you are given a ton of requests or irritation, how you are greeted. It could be that you try to say anything and it becomes something, or just not even feeling like you're met with a lot of affection or just fun laughter type of interactions. So it's very clear what the opposite of harmony would look like or feel like. So we were going to give you some clear ways.
If I can say it one more
Yeah,
time.
go ahead.
So if this need is, well, I really need harmony and peace in this environment, the answer is not sex. That's got to get clear. I really want people to understand that. Like that's not the answer here, that there is much more of a deeper layer. And I think as we approach this, you'll get a sense of, again, why we have this as kind of hard to describe on both of these previous episodes is, you wouldn't naturally just come out and say, hey, I see a number of upsets. I've been kind of distant. There's some upset from me. I feel a little bit criticized. I know I've been also getting defensive. But what I really need is for us to create some more harmony together, right? It's just not going to naturally flow out this way. And we also want to give you what I'm going to call paths to harmony, some steps, some changes that you could take on from this episode to start to move into this season where you can have more harmony in the marriage.
And they go both ways. These are things that both of you can focus on, right? That's the same with last week's episode as well. So the first path to harmony is for men to feel accepted. And this is something I've been reading a ton about. We read a lot of journal articles, studies. We just don't come from our own experience in sessions. We do a lot of research. And it is extra important to men to feel a degree of acceptance. And when they do feel like they receive more negative feedback, really, that's the simplest way to sum it up. They start to feel, and several men said this verbatim last week, I just feel like I'm not good enough. Nothing I do is good enough. I'm not even sure you actually like me anymore. And when they don't feel accepted, of course, a lot of them are going to withdraw, as you had addressed a couple times already, Aaron. So, Aaron, do you want to speak more to that need for acceptance?
I think in part it has to do with, and I know as a listener, there are some things you're like, well, yeah, but we're going to get to this. So before we do, I think there's a level of accepting certain personality traits as, well, this is me. And at one point, we saw these personality differences as things that we were attracted to in one another that, had us bond, had us see uniqueness in one another. And there does get to a point where, the criticisms or the questioning or the doubting or the not following through, not keeping your word, lots of stuff, right, that can happen, especially when you're not repairing, is that you get to this place where these differences are now really seen as pretty major issues. Like, you don't accept me for who I am as a person. Like, this is kind of who I am. You married me, right? And now you've got all these complaints. So we won't take the time to have this be a deeper conversation about personality, because personality is, in a longer term, much more fluid than we think it is. Yeah. Personality is derived even a lot from our perceptions of ourselves in group and social situations. We're even studying more on social psychology right now, and I'm amazed that, wow, like our identity is so interesting. It's not as fixed as we think it is, and it really is derived from our other relationships, and the primary one being the one with our spouse. So depending on how that goes, you can build a perception of identity through patterns of attitude and behavior, and those things can be changed, but we see it as very fixed. Yes. So maybe I did go further than I wanted to.
We should do a whole episode on personality, though. That would be great.
Yeah. So we'll leave that as path one, the acceptance. Path two is emotions and feelings being expressed in constructive ways.
So we hear a lot from men that they struggle to be receptive to the female's feelings when it is expressed in a way that feels not constructive. I'll say it that way, right? But when it feels as though as it's expressed without any emotional regulation. And this is why it's important for both partners to be aware of how we express our upsets and our frustration. And so, men do want to feel like, okay, if you are upset, if you're mad, if I'm, not keeping up with something, if I miss the boat, could it be expressed in a way that is constructive instead of what feels like an attack or immediately going from 0 to an 8 out of 10, right?
Oh, it's funny you went to 8.
Yeah. And so I didn't want to say a 10 out of 10 because that would be pretty dramatic, right? But
That's true, though.
That is something that, men want to feel there is harmony, to feel as though they aren't blindsided or that it becomes a thing so quickly. Now, there's a lot of nuances to that. I know some of you are thinking, yeah, but I have to get escalated, otherwise they won't hear me.
Because I've already said it 5 times.
Right, of course.
We're going to say something about that.
There's nuances to this, but the main underlying thing is that what helps them feel a sense of harmony is how things get expressed, that it can be a conversation instead of a conflict.
Yeah, we'll leave that as how you said it for now. Let's do the path 3. So path 3 to harmony is that men need to feel appreciated. And you've probably heard this in other places. We can appreciate our partners for the things they do. And that can be valuable, but there gets to be a certain point in either you've been appreciating for the doing of things, or it gets to this point where it's really just not enough, because what you want to be appreciated for is kind of like number 1, where you want to be accepted. So you want to be appreciated more for the person you are, not necessarily the things that you do.
Well, can I speak to something on that? What has couples lose sight of this appreciation is when you start to take even the little things for granted. And this is when you start to make a lot more withdrawals than deposits. So if the majority of your interactions with each other, or a lot of them, start to become little corrections, little feedback, little, hey, can you do more of this? You're not keeping up here. Then it does start to feel like, man, like what I do isn't even seen. And that's important to both of you, right? All of these are important to both partners. But yeah, speak more, Aaron, to that appreciation for men.
Well, we'll go back to even the doing, right? Because you said it's easy to take things for granted. So just time passes where you do feel like, as an individual, say from a male perspective, and again, we got more coming about some yeah buts, if you will. And, to be in a marriage is a certain level of sacrifice, and it's also taking on responsibility. And it's always best that that sacrifice and that responsibility comes as a choice. And a lot of times I think men, we can allow ourselves to get into a place where we justify our sacrifices as things we didn't choose, and then you're obviously going to suffer. So you kind of create your own environment of suffering. However, I think to appreciate someone, especially for being in a relationship and for the things that they have had to sacrifice, just variations of, I don't want to give this last one away, but freedom, individual time, pursuing my own interests. I used to play a lot of sports. I'm getting to an age where that's probably not going to be a thing I wouldn't spend a lot of time doing anyway. Watching sports, hanging out with friends with sports, playing sports, things like that. And other people we have a client that did a lot of kite surfing or rock climbing and a lot of adventurous things on their own. And you get married and you have to choose your responsibilities, right? You're choosing a different segment of life. And sometimes we can look back and think, oh man, remember those days? So it just helps, right, in those moments to get appreciated for the things that I do and the things that I'm choosing to do for the family and things that I'm choosing to also sacrifice that maybe I once did or once brought me enjoyment. I might realize like that's not me anymore, but it would be nice to get some appreciation for those choices I've had to make.
And there's a difference between appreciating them in your mind and verbalizing it. You might be like, well, I do appreciate those things that you do or who you are. Yeah, but how often do you say it out loud? Versus, again, more of the withdrawal statements. So it really is compared to that. We're not saying you need to be praising your partner every minute of every day. That would be exhaustive, of course, but it has to be relative to the amount of more negative remarks or the feedback. If that's the majority of what they get, then of course they're not going to feel appreciated.
Oh, yeah, totally. Because remember, your love account going up is a net score between the deposits and withdrawals that you get.
Exactly.
I think to summarize this one, it was a good point in what you said. We go from this place of what we appreciate, it becomes what we expect.
That's so true.
Yeah, write that down for a post.
Okay.
It didn't have the alliteration, but I think it's still pretty good.
Yeah, it's still a good point.
I want to just tie that to the last point because there's some similarities here, and then we'll get to the yeah buts, the ways to make these kind of requests.
Yes.
But Path to Harmony 4 then is, I really do feel that men need to feel a certain level of freedom and then in individual space. So as much as I mentioned, there's getting appreciated for what we sacrifice, the responsibilities we take on for the family, and our decisions we've made, we're still going to need, again, this is one where women need that time to fill their own cup too. But I really have not, personally, you can tell me what you think, I really have not heard hardly any of the female partners that we've coached say that they've needed the freedom. I've always heard that come from men, and not like all the men, but when I hear it, it usually is the male. Man, I really am missing some freedom for myself. And maybe it is then to pursue some of those things I mentioned earlier. Like I had tried to put together a men's event for next week where we were going to go more up north. We were going to do some things out in the wilderness, river plunge.
Do very manly things.
Yeah, a number of those things, and do it together as a group of men and males, and to then be able to challenge ourselves physically and then take conversations into like, how does this show up in our life? Where are there places that we can step up and be better with, like emotional challenge, not just physical challenge. And so I'm still looking to get that set up, but that's something that I've needed, like some freedom, some individual personal time to pursue kind of my own interests in some areas outside the relationship.
Yeah, I think definitely pursuing interests is a part of freedom. I also sense that it is like freedom to just be themselves. Again, it even kind of goes back to that acceptance one of not feeling like they get a lot of the word just keeps coming up, just feedback, the amount of feedback. And this, of course, can be different depending on how much time couples are around each other. Like some couples we talk to both work from home, or one works from home, the other is caring for the kids. So they're around each other a lot. So it feels like they get more stimulation from each other, a lot more of those interactions that could feel like withdrawals. Or when you do come back together, are you immediately directed of what to do? And so you aren't even given like a minute to process, hey, I'm back in the house and what do I need? Oh, I want to sit with my kids for 3 minutes before I get up and do something. And so they want to feel a sense of that they can kind of be themselves and direct their own actions. So yeah, that's just something. Can I add a bonus to this one? Or do you have more to say on this one?
Not this one. I was going to go into what I was calling the prerequisites for requests.
Well, then before you do that, so I want to add one more bonus path to harmony that really goes with all of these, but takes it a step even further into fulfillment. And I think that is fun interactions, that it's not all work and no play. To feel a sense of harmony and to enjoy that time together as a couple or as a family is to that it's not all about cleaning the house or all about getting things done. Can we focus on like just sitting on the ground together as a family with our young kids, or that we go outside and do something fun? Can it be okay that things aren't spotless in the house? Can we prioritize laughter together and joyful interactions and connection? So that's just kind of another layer I sense from men, especially. Again, we know all of these are important to women too. We're just highlighting things that we hear especially from men. So I think that fun piece is an element. It's not all work and no play.
So I'm going to just make this statement one last time. I really hope that you take away that think about this. Think if acceptance is not there. Think about how when your partner is receiving a lot of criticism from high level of reaction, think about when the appreciation isn't there. Think about when there's not a lot of freedom and to fill our own cups and to pursue our own interests like that. We feel more constrained.
Mm-hmm.
Do I want to be intimate with that person?
Mm-mm.
No. So take this on, these paths to harmony. If your partner is then feeling this level of acceptance, if they feel like the constructive feedback is coming in a way that can really be received, feeling appreciated, feeling this freedom, when these needs are full, yes, then my need for sex and intimacy is going to be there. So I really hope that I have solidified my argument from the very beginning. And then to close this out, there are some prerequisites for these requests.
Because we know some of you throughout were thinking, yeah, but...
My first invitation to men is this, and I had just thought about this because I almost did this on accident to you today.
Uh-oh.
But men, we need to be more assertive about when we need these things. Maybe you don't think of it in terms of harmony, like we've contextualized it here today, but the acceptance, the how communication gets expressed to you, appreciation and freedom. But you want to be more assertive and proactive about asking for these things that you need around these needs, not when your partner brings a need that they have to you and then you counter it with, well, I don't get the freedom though. If I had that freedom, then I could.
Or you don't accept me, right?
Exactly.
A counter.
Exactly.
You're so right.
Yeah, this can't be a reactive expression of your need. It needs to be very proactive, which is what we call assertiveness. So with that, there's another layer to this. I also did a video a while back about like how we make requests, kind of how we negotiate. And you kind of have to think about it from, am I making a request from a position of strength? And what I mean by that is, men, we really need to be following through on what we say we're going to do. When we do that, then we build trust, and our partners know that they can count on us. Now, that's a very foundational thing for a marriage. If I'm not doing that, if I'm not keeping my word, if I'm making compliance yeses and not following through, and there's not a lot of trust and my partner can't count on me, I don't just get to say, I need freedom. It's like, you're not a man-child. Like, if you can't keep up your responsibilities as an adult, male, father, husband, being a part of, like, creating something in the world, like, with this tribe, and tribe, I mean your small family, and if you're just, like, not keeping up to these standards, it's like, well, you don't really, you're not in a place to ask for, I want more acceptance. Acceptance of what? Your childish behaviors? Like, sorry.
Give them some straight talk. Let's go.
Yeah, so, there's definitely some things here to have so that you can make these requests again from a position of strength. So I make this as there are certain patterns of action, behavior, and attitudes and adopting of responsibility that I think as men we need to take on. And then our level of assertiveness about our needs, that's going to be a much better place to come from to request these foundational needs.
So true. And as you're listening to this episode, and again, we really hope you listened to last week's on women's need, you'll notice that an undercurrent of this is really about identifying the needle movers for each other. Needle movers meaning the things that are most crucial to each other. And it's not one counteracts the other. It's that you both come to the table making these positive changes. And a way that we can help you take these episodes and really create conversations about these and promises and commitments to each other is with our new guide. We know that a lot of you have gotten this, but there are some that don't know about it yet. So our steps to rebuilding a marriage is a must, especially towards the end of the year and beginning the new year. It's such a great time to be able to regroup and assess things and be able to leave some stuff in the past and declare new and better things for the future. And so what can feel overwhelming with that is where do you start? How do you not make it, against each other and blaming each other? So we simplify it with these conversations to have in order to start a new chapter together. So you want to get this Steps to Rebuild a Marriage guide. It will really support you in having productive and honest conversations together and making sure it's clearly written out. It isn't something you're going to say one night at 9 p.m. and then forget the next day. It is written out together. So that link is in the show notes. You can also go to thecouplesexperience.com/rebuild to get that Steps to Rebuild a Marriage guide. An absolute must, but we are so glad that these episodes resonate. For those of you who are new to our podcast, make sure that you hit that subscribe button so that you can listen to our future episodes where we cover so many different tools, skills, perspectives, so that you can really understand each other and be a team no matter the challenges that you face. So send us a note about how you enjoyed this episode. Make sure you listen to last week, and then we can't wait to talk to you next time.